Oh, podcasting gods, please help us today in this episode discussing Beltane and masculine and feminine and all those good things. Anyways, welcome to the Tree of Life podcast, episode something, because I've lost track because it's been over a year now and we don't have to keep track. My name is Jacob Totson. This is Kubi May. Say hi,
Hello.
Kubi. Hello.
Hi.
Wait,
Hi.
I don't know if we get new listeners very often, but for the few people, like we get a few thousand. The few thousand people that listen to us, we love you. You're great.
Thank you for being here with us and listening to our blatherings.
So, but because of our blatherings, one of the things we're thinking about is like we didn't want to just like regurgitate the same stuff because obviously we still want to kind of follow the seasonal cycles a little bit in our conversation. So this episode's kind of falling on Beltane. But in this episode, we're going to be discussing another topic, and this one is one that Kubi brought up. So, Kubi, do you want to kind of take, kind of the inspiration behind the other topic today?
Wow. Because it's Beltane, which is very much about the union between the masculine and the feminine, with the hawthorn May Queen and the king, the Oak King or Green Man, different aspects of it. Thought it'd be brilliant for us to talk about what the divine masculine and the divine feminine.
Well, you're doing great so far. Have you had a coffee,
Think about
Kubi?
that
You seem a little sleepy today.
Oh, yeah. And just basically, yeah, just to really explore what that is, if it can even exist in this modern day culture, and what that even looks like in its modern context.
Yeah, and I feel like hopefully our audience understand that when we talk about this, like like you said, it is an interesting topic that is very pertinent to today, and it's something that is being highly debated. And we're not making this out of like any kind of nefarious nature. Like we don't want to, upset anyone. We don't want to offend anyone. Like we generally just want to have a conversation about it. And I think, and my personal perspective on life, we need to be allowed to talk about things. And so hopefully you understand we come at this conversation good natured. And we hope it's beneficial to everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but before then, we need to do our podcaster due diligence because we don't really make money from this. So we don't have sponsorships or anything like that. And so if you want to support us and what we do, this is just how you can. So Kubi, if you want to start us off, how can people support you and what you're doing at the moment?
Oh, thanks, Jacob. Yeah, I've now launched. Oh my God, I can't talk today. I have now launched the Path of the Oak, which is my 2-year training in sort of druidry, herbalism, ancestral healing, land rituals, the whole skaboosh of what I do and live for it.
Skaboosh, you're making upwards now.
If you can't talk, then just invent your own words, all right? Yeah, so that's all launched and ready to go on my website now. The links below in the blurb. Yeah, that's something I'm very excited about.
Did you hold
And
up the poster? Did I miss it? Did you
oh
hold it?
yeah, I got
Yeah,
the
you got a
poster. I
poster.
got to hold it up and everything.
Look at that. So
Look,
nice.
so organized that there is a poster for it. So if anyone fancies joining me for that 2-year training, I'm taking on students now. It's very affordable, and it's a 2-year journey with me, learning about all of these things.
Yeah, well, very good.
Over to you. What's
Yeah,
your
it was
spiel?
always I was reflecting on like the Samhain video, and I was just like constantly mentioning the Glastonbury Taurus. I was like, "Oh, wait, the Glastonbury Taurus." But yeah, like the two main ways to kind of support what I do is obviously the books I've written, so the Glastonbury Taurus being one of them. And it's really sad. I was actually reflecting. It's been a year now since I left Glastonbury from my month staying there,
Oh,
which is where I got the inspiration for writing the Glastonbury Tourist. I was reflecting a lot on how to encapsulate that experience. So last year I spent a month in the beautiful lands of Avalon, and it was there that I kind of got this idea to write this book. And so if you want to, I mean, everyone that's read it, like I've read some really great reviews. I had one from the UK actually recently. It was someone that like, it was like, holy shit, this person like really captured the ability, what Glastonbury is. It's weird, it's
yeah.
wonderful, it's magical, it's wild. Yeah, based on some random review that I just mentioned to you, a lot of people said it's really good. So my Glastonbury Taurus is the main thing, but then I also do have the YouTube and Patreon. I'm kind of doing quite a course. I've just been trying to think of ways to bring more life into Patreon and the
Mm,
people that have supported me for years now. And so at the $10 tier, I'm offering like monthly challenges, essentially things that have helped me in my own journey. And so
Mm.
like the first month challenge was, and I don't know how well you do with cold water, but I was doing cold showers, do cold shower for every day, have 1 day a week of digital detoxing. So like, toss your phone in the trash and walk away, and then journal every day as well. So it's all stuff that's like helped me in my spiritual journey, kind of
Yeah,
like encouraging everyone else to do it.
sort of
Uh,
passing the baton on of your own experiences.
yeah, and so next month, a sneak peek. Next month, that's why I was talking about intermittent fasting. So my next month, I'm encouraging everyone to do intermittent fasting, but then
Mm.
also to build up to a 24-hour, potentially a 48-hour fast. Um,
Mm.
and and then I'm still working on the last two. I think the other one was daily meditation, and then saying trying something new, and that's definitely with Glastonbury because I was doing the thing where I just said yes to everything.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. It's such a dangerous
Yeah,
place to say yes to everything.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's harder in like, obviously not Glastonbury, but yeah, I'm going to encourage people to go to like their local coffee shops because there's always like a billboard at a coffee shop, even a Starbucks, that has like little classes and stuff. Like just go in there, you got to pick one, close your eyes, just pick one and go to a random class, a random yoga section just to get you out there. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing is so if you want to be a kind of part of that, there's a chat community. Head on down to Patreon and support me there. But with that, let's get started. But so let's kind of go roll into Beltane. So how are you feeling? Like we're at the time of recording this only a few days away from Beltane at the moment.
Oh, it's getting really exciting in Glastonbury because the blossom is just bursting out of the trees here. Like the abbey looks incredible at the moment. All the apple orchards are just like blooming, full bloom, and so we're really feeling those fertile spring energies on the land, and a lot of tourism starting to come through now. Yeah, so on the first, there'll be the usual sort of things of the sunrise up on the tor, the leaping of the fertility fires in Chalice Well, the erecting of the rather phallic maypole,
You're erecting.
which the Green Men will take down in procession um, to Bushy Coombe, which is one of our sacred lands here, and yeah, the procession of the May King and Queen to get married on the lands. So really beautiful. It's my favourite sacred celebration here in Glastonbury. So I look forward to it every single year.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so sad. I left before it happened last year.
I know, I can't believe it. What were you thinking?
Well, well, that was the year I was going to Ireland to watch Beltane there. So I had to choose between Beltane and Glastonbury and Beltane and Ireland. But I tell you,
Actually,
next year I'm planning to be back in the UK in the April to May time. So I'll make Glastonbury a target for Beltane.
yes, perfect. That's great to know. Did you do the Hill of Tara last year in Ireland?
I went to the Hill of Tara, but yeah, and then they do their Beltane celebration at the Hill of Ishnak.
Right, of course. Yeah, because I remember reading, I think it's the Hill of Tara that the old gods allegedly landed on and it was believed to be the 1st of May. So that's another connection into Beltane.
Well, and it
Uh,
has the other very erect stone, the Fial stone or the Le Fial.
the one that crowns the kings or cries out
Yeah,
when
yeah,
it's,
that's very.
yeah. And that does look rather phallic as well,
It's
doesn't it?
very phallic. They trim the bushes well, though.
The Celtic folklore, honestly, it's just full of phallic metaphors. But I suppose that was such an important time of year, wasn't it? The fertility of the land is a major, major thing back in
Yeah,
those days in the Iron Age.
yeah, and I think one of my arguments, like I made like a Beltane video reflecting on like the two festivals that I went to, and it seems like the addition of the Green Man as a common element in Beltane celebrations is a relatively modern thing, but it makes sense, in the sense that it's just like the land returning.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? A lot of people think it may have come from Canunos as well. Like
Yeah,
it might be another sort of later adaptation to make it acceptable to sort of syncretize it more with the Christians. But it's interesting. The green man sort of considered to be a very pagan symbol, even though it's very modern.
yeah. Well, the Green Man's weird. I've been trying to do research on the Green Man, and it's been really difficult because there's not a lot of books written specifically about the Green Man.
Yeah.
If they are, they're like fantasy writings, and the Green Man's like really old. He goes really far back in time, but there's not really a written source material on him. It's just like, no, he's been around. He's been around for like 2,000 years, 3,000 years.
Mm,
And he's been through so many different cultures, and he's
mm.
survived Christianization as well, which is really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, good old green man. But yeah,
So
it's oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, what are your thoughts on like the May Queen? Because the May Queen is also a very scattered element that
Mm.
it's hard to track down like where exactly it started. It seems.
Yeah, to be honest, my only real discovery around the roots of the May Queen have been through my exploration of the Irish Ogham, which is those the 20 trees that have sacred teachings attached to it, and the sixth Ogham is the hawthorn. Hawthorn is the what the May Queen wears. It's the traditional flower garland that she wears. So straight away, I was thinking, what's going on here? Let's look at the Hawthorn Ogham and see what's the story is or the connected folklore to it. And sure enough, we've got a story of Olwen and Culhwch, her lover, and a series of almost impossible trials that get set from her father, whose name is Ysbaddaden, and that means hawthorn root. Ysbaddaden, he's a giant,
It's a cool
very
name.
nice.
I'm going to name my son's Spadman.
Yeah, it's a strong name, isn't it? Definitely won't get bullied at school. But yeah, he sets out these series of impossible trials that this man Kuluk needs to meet before he can take Olwen's hand in marriage. So we see the divine union happening there. Olwen's name also means white footprint, which is probably a little bit of a nod towards the white blossom of the hawthorn. And he rallies together King Arthur and his 6 men to complete these series of trials. So that I think really does sort of speak to the May Queen and what the expectations were, at least in the time of the writing of this, which would have been about 11th century, how the divine masculine and feminine looked, and that it was essentially up to the man to prove himself worthy of the love of the woman. Very old fashioned, very, very sweet, really.
Yeah.
Whereas later on, because if you complete the OM 1 month at a time, 12 months on, the 18th Owen brings us back round to the same month. And curiously, it's Heather. And Heather is Old Irish for Freoch, which is means bravery. And there's a story, again, I believe to be, oh, I'm going to say it's either Welsh or Irish folklore story about Freoch and Finnebar and how he has to complete a series of trials before he can take their daughter's hand in marriage. Um, but it's a bit different this time, and I actually quite like this version of the divine union. One of the things is she gives him a gold ring, and the father tosses it into the mouth of a salmon. Now we know in all of the Celtic folklore that the salmon represents access to the other world. It's connected with shamanic teachings and things. And the mother says to go and pick some rowan berries from across the stream. Rowan is also about magical protection. So the parents are sort of demanding he shows his magical prowess so that he can take their daughter and rule the magical other world with her. And on the way back, he gets attacked by a serpent, and the only person that will give him his sword to slay the serpent is Finnebar, his lover. And I think and he does. He manages to slay the serpent and he marries her. But it's interesting that she's the only one that will give him his sword. And there's a
Mm,
beautiful metaphor in that, I think, about the role of the woman, perhaps in divine union with the man, about how,
yeah.
although he will be the one that goes out into the world and slays, she is also a very vital part of handing him his sword and being
Mm.
beside him through the battles of life.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting because that reminds me, not quite to the same extent, but with like the story of Freyr and Gurthur and Norse
Oh,
mythology. Because, well, it's like it's a weird story because like when you look at it from above and you tell it a certain way, it's romantic. But when you actually read it, it's not romantic. So essentially, like, do you know the story of Freyr and Gurthur?
I don't. No, pray tell.
Pray tell. So Freyr, obviously the god, his name just literally means Lord, the god of fertility, the fields, the good god, and he goes to Odin's throne, Helatsgjalf, and only Odin and Frigg are supposed to sit in Helatsgjalf, and so there's like definitely an element of like obtaining knowledge you're not supposed to have. But anyways, he sits on the throne that allows him to see all over the world. And he looks for like the most beautiful woman. And it's actually a giant woman. And I think it was the daughter or the servant of another giant. Can't remember quite. and it's her name's Gerther. And so he's like, "Oh, I want this woman. She's the most beautiful." And so he sends his like servant, I think it was Skirnir. He sends his servant to go and negotiate for this beautiful woman. And
Mhm.
essentially, again, looking from above, he eventually has to give up his sword. And so he has to give up his weapon. And it's known in the prophecies that he'll have to fight the fire giant one day, Surtur. And when he fights the fire giant, he needs that sword. And so he kind of there's a kind of an illusion that he knows that if he gives up his sword, he's going to die at the Battle of Ragnarok. And so he does it anyways for love. And he goes into the final battle with only an antler instead because he gave up his sword.
Mm.
And then obviously ends up marrying Gerther and has the most beautiful woman in love. And so like there's this element again of giving up the sword, and even with the knowledge of giving up your sword will lead to your death. Because we know how we all get with love is that we get very dramatic and you're like, you'll give anything to be with this person. So there's definitely that element of the story. But when you dive into the story, it's very abusive. And like Skirnir basically is like, I will beat you, woman, unless you come with me.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but when you look at it from above, it's like, oh, look at this romance story about giving up your weapon for love. And it's like, don't
I
pay
suppose
attention to the domestic abuse.
I suppose we have to remember when these things were written, they were in very, like, different times. But it does give us a little interesting window into what romance meant back then, doesn't it? This whole idea, like you said, of giving up the sword. Do you think that means literally giving up the fight, or do you feel like that is a metaphor for protection? Or
I think maybe it's a metaphor for giving up the youth.
mm,
Because it's kind of that acceptance of like the wild man, going out and raiding or adventuring, or even for me, I had to give up the sword.
mm,
My sword was the wandering, wandering Europe and things like that. It was amazing, but I realized that if I wanted love, I had to give that up,
mm,
and so I had to give up my version of the sword in order to enter into the new stage of manhood, into eventually being a husband and a father. Is
yeah,
you can't, and the men that struggle to give that up, and the fight to give that up, like I still struggle with it. I miss wandering the world. I'm in a wonderful relationship now that I'm so grateful for, but of course,
mm,
there's still the element of me that's just like, I'd rather be wandering
okay,
because of the adventure.
yeah.
So I do think there's kind of a parable for the sacred masculine, in what you have to give up for starting a family and being a good lord.
Yeah, right. And that's the sort of trials that we see set out in these folklore stories, and the trials that are set out from the parents, which is right, isn't it? So if you sort of think you're in those days, the parents would have handed their daughter over. They want to see, is this man able to sacrifice aspects of himself? Is he able to give certain things up? Is he able to, show himself as worthy? Um, yeah, it is really interesting. And I do wonder with the sword if it's like the idea of giving up the fight as well. So sort of the idea that you don't fight each other, but you fight side by side against the
Hmm.
world, or
Yeah, that
something
could be
like
an
that.
element of
That
that.
you then you sort of form a union together in that sense. So yeah, I think those stories speak to both aspects of giving up the sacrifice of what are you willing to give up to become in union, to come into union with someone else,
Yeah.
and also then how will you approach the world together.
Well, it's interesting because I've been kind of working on this thread lately that, when we look at like the mythologies and the ancient magics and things like that, like we didn't really have therapists back then, and we didn't have therapy, and so we had stories and we had magic
Yeah,
instead. And obviously, like couples counseling is a big thing these days, and working through problems and making relationships work in a world of 50% divorce rates. We didn't have couples counseling back in the day, and so you had these kind of stories, like, so if you went before the elder and you're like, elder, I'm struggling because of love, they would tell you a story like this to
yeah.
be teach you a lesson. It's how we share knowledge with one another, and so obviously stories of love are one of the ways that we send messages about how to survive relationships.
Absolutely. That's such a good point because it's through that storytelling that people find their common ground, isn't it? That relatable aspect. They can imagine themselves as the hero of the story and then they can integrate it into their own psyche.
Well, and then there's the most famous story of love, Romeo and Juliet. Like I've seen it. Like there was actually a story in Scotland. I think it was at Loch Maree. It was about a Viking warrior and his queen, and essentially it was a Romeo and Juliet story. Is that it was I can't remember the exact details, but essentially it leads to like both of them dying.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. It's
yeah,
tragic,
because
isn't
of
it?
love. Yeah, it's the tragic love. And love is a tragedy. How many of us have had everyone has been heartbroken before.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
the gateways of life is being heartbroken and how bad that feels.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what? I was having a really interesting conversation with someone about this recently and saying how they're the real kind of cornerstones of a person's life, like even relationships that have gone wrong or that were challenging, they really do help grow the spirit, don't they? They sort of strengthen the soul, lessons get learned, you sort of level up. And
Yeah.
they really are the markers of your sort of own personal evolution through life.
Yeah. I definitely, I guess this kind of goes into our conversation from February a little bit. So to kind of steer it in the direction of the divine masculine, divine feminine, was there any catalyst for you as far as like, conversations you've been having lately about the divine masculine and feminine about this time of year?
Any catalysts? What sort of
Yeah, it was like, have you been in any conversations lately with anyone about like the divine masculine, the divine feminine,
Oh,
that
I
made
see
you
what you
reflect
mean.
on it? Yeah.
It's funny because we are actually myself and Edward are hosting we do a philosophy group once a month, and it's gonna be the theme of this one, but it's on
Oh, yeah,
Friday. So I was like, "Oh, I would have had so much juicy ideas then."
yeah.
For a week too late. But, I mean, it's kind of the hot topic, isn't it? About
Yeah.
especially in spiritual circles, I think there's a lot of talk about what is the divine masculine? How does it look? How does it behave in this modern world? Back in even back as far as like the 1940s, 1950s, there was only one partner for you. You'd grow up and you'd marry the village boy, and that would be that. And
The village
these,
boy.
the village boy, come here, village boy, let's get married. But these days, it's more about, people seem to have so many relationships before they find the one. And so that's been an interesting hot topic that I've had with people is, is that even necessary? Is there such thing as just meeting one? Or are we spoilt by so much choice that we sort of lose out on that meeting the one very early on because of
Mm.
things like Tinder and, having too many options in the modern world?
Yeah, no, that's really difficult. And I'll be the first one to criticize online dating, but the relationship I'm in right now, we met online.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know a lot of couples now that are like, people that are together or married or engaged, a lot of them met online. So the landscape has definitely changed
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. But as far as like the divine masculine and divine feminine conversation, I think the thing to precursor this with is my understanding, and it seems like most people in spiritual circles is, and I think this is a very good thing that we need to start talking about more as a society, is the fact that we all have the divine masculine and the divine feminine within us.
Mm,
And we have to nurture both of those sides of us in order to be a more complete whole of ourselves.
yeah. Oh my gosh, absolutely. I've definitely noticed from past relationships that when I've been more if I've lent more into a masculine, more tomboy part of myself, I've pulled into orbit naturally more feminine men. Now I've been working more on balancing my feminine and more of those kind of yin aspects of myself. I pull into orbit a lovely masculine man like my lovely Edward.
Yeah.
And it feels like if we're not in balance with ourselves, we will ultimately pull into our balance. We will pull imbalance into our orbit.
Yeah.
And it's only when we've done that inner work of balancing both the masculine and feminine within ourselves that we can truly call that in. I'm a real believer in that.
Yeah. Now, would you say like, and this is really difficult because like when I was, basically told I needed to heal my feminine, it was like that question of like, well, what is my feminine?
Mm.
And it is difficult because we don't want to say like, there is that trope, that stereotype, like, oh, women are just too emotional, like they're just
Mm.
emotional beings. But to some degree, it does feel like that feeling our feminine is healing our emotional side and being in connection with our emotions.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's something that applies to, everybody, doesn't it? It's not just something that's saved exclusively for women. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, I think
I've
part
already
of the
cried
process.
today. It's okay. We need to cry
Oh,
more.
well, I think let's celebrate that. More tears from men, please, because
Yeah, yeah.
it's so important that humans feel, isn't it?
Yeah.
regardless of men and women, it's important that humans are feeling their feelings, because only then can we be very authentic with ourselves, and we can bring authenticity to relation with other then.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's yeah, it's really difficult because I think men have been out of balance. I think,
Mm,
obviously, in a patriarchal society, we've been out of balance like societally. But I think, in a way, we've been telling women, putting women down for their emotions, but we also been putting men down for their emotions. I think
yeah.
we as a society have been disconnected from the feminine, not just on one side of the aisle or the other on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you can see where the imbalance has come about in society. Because there's a big argument as well that because of that, women are now having to be the men, blah blah blah,
Mm,
and that women are sort of, the main earners and all of this, and that's creating an imbalance. And it's an interesting one because ultimately people can do whatever they want for their career.
right.
Everyone will do different things. But I really love the idea of, what happens when we try and hit the center? What
Mm,
happens when we
for
do
sure.
balance though? And we're both feeling emotions, and we're also holding space for each other. That it shouldn't just be men expected to hold space for women, but also women holding space for men, that there is a equality there that can be found by
Mm.
balancing both within ourselves.
Well, an interesting perspective I was just kind of I'm formulating right now is because like the 1950s, at least in the Americas, I don't know if it's quite the same with
Mm,
England, but you had these like people from the military coming in, these manly men. We just won the war, coming in,
yeah,
so they're embodying a lot of masculine energy. And so, because of that, the women had to balance out, and so women became more of like the perfect housewife model because you had this very masculine energy front moving in, and so they became more of leaning into that feminine energy and like solidified those roles because they
mm,
balanced each other. But the
mm,
problem is they became too codependent
mm,
on one another's energies. And so because we as humans, like, to be in a good relationship, you might be able to like be the yin and yang of each other, but we all need to heal, and we all need to be exploring both of our masculine and feminine sides, no matter what relationship, or gay,
yeah.
straight, no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? It's really important. Balance in life and anything is so important. Um, but it does bring up a very, it's a sensitive topic actually. So I feel quite
Yeah.
tentative as I approach this, but about
We
what
love
are the
you. We love the audience. We're not trying to offend. We're just trying to talk.
curious exploration of
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
when we're thinking about, if we bring it back to the pagan traditions of roles of men and women in the Celtic and the kind of Norse times, in those days, we think, what would the traditional role have been then? And it's interesting because there's lots of evidence coming through now of women warriors in Celtic areas, so that the women were
Mm.
potentially going out and hunting and fighting as much. And then the stories of, oh, what's her name? Warrior goddess. Celtic warrior goddess, not Joan of
Oh,
Arc.
uh, well, not
Boudica.
Andraste, Boudica.
No,
Well, she wasn't a goddess, but a person. But yeah,
sorry, I mean, yeah, Boudica.
yeah,
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 I
Boudica.
mean Boudica. Yeah. Yeah, and the idea that a woman can lead an army, and that was obviously something that was quite prevalent in those cultures back then. And yet, there's also this story of the nurturer, of women naturally being more nurturing, whereas men would naturally go out and hunt. And it's funny because I can only speak from my own subjective experience
Yeah,
with
yeah.
this.
That's always the
But
safest way to be.
yeah, yeah. Just very recently, we went to go and visit some of our friends, one of Edward's friends in Cornwall, and the lads brought home this pheasant that had been found on the road for dinner, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm a real meat eater," and I've always sort of said, at some point I should learn how to hunt, because I shouldn't be eating meat unless I have the balls to actually go and hunt it.
Right.
And I thought I'll start small with this pheasant. I'll watch the lads gut it and prepare it. And I got the opportunity to begin plucking the pheasant myself, and I couldn't even do that. And I just thought to myself, it's fascinating because even with all the will in the world, there is nothing in my ancestral DNA or memory that has plucking a pheasant in there. It's just not, like, I was
They
like
blocked that out.
calling upon the ancestors, like, come on,
Help me pluck this pheasant.
help me out. But I definitely, for me, I definitely feel like my personal role within the divine feminine. or maybe just within the feminine for myself, is very much nurturer. So I'm very much a fire tender, a storyteller, a nurturer, more mother archetype. There is no part in me that can go out and hunt.
Well, it's
No,
interesting to
at
say that
all.
because one of the stories in my family, like my family, obviously coming from like the Kentucky Appalachia region, especially in like my grandfather's generation, he
Yeah.
tells me stories all the time. Like his grandmother, if he wanted, our family favorite recipes, chicken and dumplings, is she would usually be the one to go out and like just grab a chicken by the neck and like wring its neck, and then she would just start plucking the feathers, and she would do all the work, and she was
Yeah.
still like a housewife, but she's
Yeah.
over here like, oh, chicken, just
Yeah.
kill the chicken, done, pluck the feathers. And then like one of the things she passed down to my grandpa is like she would tell him at church, like, hey, you want chicken and dumplings? Go home and pick a chicken out and wring its neck. So I definitely think there's an element of us being more urban people, more city people these days versus like
Yeah.
the rural, being country people, being in the farm, in the earth. I think naturally kind of ties us to more of the balanced energies because here you have a
Mm.
woman that's like a housewife, but she's also just like, come here, chicken.
Yeah, and that would have been more common, right, back
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
day.
for sure.
So it really, I'm constantly questioning what is the role of a woman, and of course it is subjective for every person, and it flows all the time between people in different ways. And what is the role of the man now in society? And have we also the gray areas in between? Like, have we also sort of blurred those lines of exploration of what man and woman is so much that we've lost those polarities,
Mm.
or
Yeah,
and yet those polarities seem so extreme in these folklore stories that we're exploring in the pagan world,
yeah,
of
yeah,
the man being one way and the woman being another. And
yeah.
yeah, what effect does that have on society? What effect does that have on
Well, I think we're
the
seeing the effects it has on society.
yeah, it's a curious thing to ponder on.
Yeah, I
um
think for me, I always go with my natural reaction to things, like,
yeah.
especially trying to live in a more pagan mindset. And if someone comes up to me with like a query, and I know I've said this before, I think even on a podcast, I remember the first time someone asked me about like, being trans. And it was someone who was a woman wanting to be a man, and they messaged me like, "Hey, how do I connect to this in a pagan way?" And I
Mm,
really like, and it was before I think everything got really political about it. I feel like once things become political, the walls go up and we all have to be like super like cautious all the time. But
mm,
back then it was just like, I was like, oh, I'm just having a natural conversation. Like, wow, let me explore this. And I was
mm,
thinking, I'm like, well, for me, if I think about you coming to me and you're like, I want to be a man, I think, well, manhood is not something that was a light switch for me. It's not something
mm,
that just turned on when I got my first erection. It's something that I have to work for every day.
yeah.
It's something that I live and embody every day. And so understanding that one, you're at a disadvantage because I've had the trials of being, 20 years old, 25 or whatever I was at this time. Like I've 25 years to figure out my manhood. And now you're starting from zero. Like it's going to take
Mm,
time. I think that's the thing that we're not honest about people enough is that
mm,
exploring your gender, exploring your connection to the masculine, to the feminine, it takes time. And my
yeah.
one of my biggest critiques of our current explorations of these things, especially medically, is the rushing of the process because
Mm,
it is something that takes years. It's why it takes us so many years to develop into the people that we are. And so we
yeah.
cannot rush these things. Otherwise, we're going to cause more damage. Because
Yeah.
I want people to be the best version of themselves. If that means you need to be a man or a woman, that's fine. But also understand that it's not a fast process.
Yeah.
Healing takes so much time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's one thing is clear within the pagan kind of heroes and the gods and the stories, is that there's that real sliding scale of what feminine is versus what
Mm,
masculine is. So you've got like Blodeuwedd, the flower goddess, very feminine and beautiful and sweet, and then you've got the Morrigan, who's this kind of fierce, battle goddess and quite gnarly, and then you've also got the crone aspects. So we see that, I mean, a lot of warrior queens like Boudica as well, of women that were actually very masculine in their way. So there's also this idea of I guess in the Celtic folklore, woman was, women were always women, but there was this massive sliding scale to explore within, from warrior to
Yeah.
queen to throne to the glorious goddess and the flower goddess. Such a wide variety. And I wonder if these days, if there's almost not enough acceptance of that sliding scale, that people
Mm.
are almost having to feel like they need to hop into other genders.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I
is there
think
something that we can criticize in society that's going on there?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, though. I think the problem became monotheism, and not just
Mm,
monotheism, but Protestantism in particular, because we started shifting away. Because even with Catholicism, there was still the idea of the saints. Saint Bridget being one of the most common and one of the earliest adopted. Is
mm,
women still had role models, and men still had role models. Men could follow Saint Bridget. And within paganism, you can follow multiple gods within any polytheism. And so if I want to connect to my feminine, as a pagan, I'm like, oh, who do I need to connect to? And I kind of feel it out. I'm like, hey, do I need Freya? No, I don't really need Freya. Do I need Yorth, the earth
mm,
goddess? Yeah, I need more of the earth goddess. And so for
mm,
me, when I was looking to explore my feminine side, I sat there with the different identities of the goddesses that we know. And I was like, okay, which one feels more like my blend of feminine? Like, I'm
mm,
not really a Freya person. I'm not really like something about her doesn't connect with me, but
yeah.
I'm much more rooted in earth goddesses. And so
Mm,
my healing came from earth goddess energy. And so there's so many different flavors of femininity, which the ancients explored, which is why we have so many different goddesses. It's why we have so many different gods, is because they understood the many different aspects of masculine and feminine energies. And so it gave people so many more pathways to explore those energies. But in a world of atheism and monotheism, we don't have those pathways to explore, which is why we've ended up in the society we are in today.
wow, what a good summary of it. Yeah, I really agree with what you're saying there. It's so fascinating, isn't it? That it's just we've almost narrowed our vision of exploration in that sense in society. And yeah, because of that, it's become very black and white, and people are literally, having to completely change ship in order to feel accepted for who they are, potentially. Oh, I can't hear you, Jacob.
I muted myself when I mic dropped. Uh, I know I feel very good about what I just said, and a lot of the times I don't realize you know formulated thoughts until I say them out loud. But honestly, I think that's the key,
Mm,
because if a man comes to me like, oh, I need to be more emotional, I need to connect to my feminine, it's like you know in our modern society be like, oh, you need to become a woman. But in a pagan perspective, it's like, oh, here's Jord, here's Freya,
yeah,
here's Nehalinia, here's Andraste. Which one do you want to connect with? Let's go down one of these pathways.
yeah,
And I feel like
yeah.
that's much more rooted in ourselves as an identity. And again, I'm not saying that if being trans is the answer for you, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying there are other options as well. And we as a
Mm,
society have limited it to you either have to be a man or a woman, and you have to switch sides, like you said,
yeah,
if you don't align with it.
yeah, yeah. Which is really sad, isn't it? That's actually like a bit of a tragedy, that people don't feel comfortable in their own society, or don't have the things that they can reach out to explore those different energies. It's a kind of an energy, isn't it? Different energies, feminine energies, masculine energies.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I think
yeah, it's really
my
fascinating.
one of my good friends, and she listens to the podcast. I'm mentioning you. I won't mention her by name, but I know that very early on when I met her, like she is very feminine in the sense of motherliness. She's a mother. She has two kids. At that time, she had two kids, and she just had her third a year ago. And she has a pretty traditional marriage, from what I understand. But they're both hunters. They're both kind of into
Mm,
like that country living. They want a homestead. But one of the things that right away she was like, I connect to Thor. Like Thor was one of her main gods. And so because she has this religion that allows her to explore other pathways, like, oh, I'm a woman that worships Thor, like that kind of creates an interesting balance. Like, oh, you're still feminine, but you have this kind of like outward masculine element that you present as well. That's really cool to
yeah.
me.
That's really cool. And of course, people change on a day-to-day basis. Like
Yeah.
the different characters throughout the day that a person can be, depending, you wake up in one mood, you go to bed in another. You could all the different goddesses and deities that you can pull on in the space of a day of, needing to bring out a more fierce side at one point and then going into softness at another point.
Yeah. No, it's really beautiful. And then I do think there is a little bit more androgyny, if we start talking about like, non-binary or being in the middle between the really genders and things like that. And there's been a lot of conversation about the Norse, particularly about Loki being a very androgynous figure. And
Mm,
I think it's very fitting. I think when you look at the story of Loki or some of the modern like actors that have portrayed Loki, particularly when it comes to like the Ragnarok TV show, I think they explore it really well about
mm,
Loki's relationship with both the masculine and feminine and being between them.
yeah,
And I know in the Greek as well, I think it's the Greek. I mean, the term hermaphrodite comes from a god who was androgynous, who had both genders.
yeah. And is it
Yeah.
almost like they acted as the bridge between the genders?
Yeah.
They were almost like I don't know if was there an aspect of like them being able to communicate and translate on behalf of one another?
I don't
Those
know
2
the
aspects.
specifics, but I just know the root origin of the term hermaphrodite comes from an actual Greek figure,
That's
which is
yeah,
interesting because that's typically not an accepted term,
yeah,
far as I know. But at the same
yeah,
time, like it's like the Greeks were like, yeah, it's a thing. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's very, very fascinating. And I always find it interesting to ask um, men this question of like, the question of how you feel in response to the word divine masculine in a modern day world. Do you feel like it's like how would you summarize what your concept of that is? And do you feel like you can easily be that in this modern day world?
Well, I think this kind of goes again. I think this is why I'm saying polytheism's dope because, like, if we say as a society, what is the divine truth of masculinity? You're saying there's only one identity of it. There's not.
Mm,
There's not one truth,
mm,
divine femininity. There's not one truth, divine masculinity. And I think, again, the ancients explored these things. And that's why we have so many different variants of gods. Are
yeah.
you, are you a Freyr? Are you more Odinic? Are you more Thor like? Are you more Njord like? Are you more Tyr like? Are you more, you know, I'm trying to think of Celtic now, but I'm blanking because I was on the Norse. Are you more like the Dagda? Are you more like Angus or Lou?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
so many different identities to divine masculinity that you can embody or embody it
Yeah.
multiple times. But there are characteristics naturally. Me being more of an Odinic person, I don't find Odin to be this like kind of like buff burly dude. And Odin, flirts with the more exploring the femininity side. There's even stories of him living as a witch, exploring witchcraft and women's magic. And
Mhm.
so being more open to the understanding of the masculine and the feminine energy. Whereas like Thor more embodies like, I beat things up and I put them down.
And that
um,
he's more like the
yeah,
kind of lad you might meet at the pub on a Friday night when it gets a bit rowdy.
yeah. And then one of the gods I really like from the Norse that I think embodies a really forgotten aspect of manhood is the protector energies.
Mm,
Is deities such as Heimdall. Heimdall doesn't sleep. He watches over the world and he looks for signs of the end of the world. And he warns the gods if something happens. And I do think that, this identity of men as protectors is something that we need.
mm,
Um,
mm,
because how many times have we seen videos of like people getting beat up in the streets or mugged and people don't do anything? Like, I don't care
yeah,
if you're a man or a woman, but I do think one of the positive masculine tributes is being like, no, I'm going to stand up for this person. I'm going to
yeah.
protect. And seeing a society where we don't protect one another anymore shows us that we're imbalanced in the masculine to me.
Absolutely. And you know what? That's interesting that you're using the word protection because I was thinking, I was just reflecting as you were saying that all of those male Celtic figures, I'm not sure how it is for the Norse, you'll know more about that than me, but those male Celtic deities, so Angus, Lu, the Dagda, they all display protective qualities, but in completely different ways.
Mm,
So, the dag does much more to be kind of use his brute force to protect, or protects through abundance. You've got the cauldron of plenty. His version of protection is by giving and being a provider. Whereas you've got Lou, who's this warrior of light, and you can use these swords and defend in those ways. And then Angus, who's very poetic, very soft and emotional, and sort of protects valiantly by going and rescuing sort of the idea of him going and protecting. like he goes to retrieve his love, and she's in the form of a swan, and he has to use his intuition to choose her. I think we spoke about it a
Yeah.
few podcasts ago. So that's again a guy that's protecting and rescuing through intuition and poetry and following his vision and his dreams. Lots of different aspects of divine masculine there, but all with an overarching theme of protection. So
Yeah.
maybe that's the common thread in the divine masculine, is the ability to protect.
Yeah, I think one of the things I said during a ritual once, I was doing like an Oda ritual, and I
Mm.
had like for the motif of the ritual, I had a shield and an axe, and it kind of came to me in the moment when I was doing it. Is one of the things I said is we need to enter into a time of the shield again and not the
Mhm.
axe, a time of
Mhm.
protection, a time of just like not aggressiveness and things like that.
Yeah.
The age of the axe needs to go,
Yeah.
because I think again, like when looking at these different tropes, is I think the shield is a much more protective element of the masculine, I guess, as the axe
Mhm.
should only be needed as a defender of the shield rather than an aggressor.
Right, and aggressor kind of comes with a theme of dominance as well,
Yeah.
which comes power play and things, whereas the shield, yeah, beautiful description of that lovely masculine energy. A nice metaphor for it. And it's interesting because then I'm thinking, oh, so what would the divine feminine be if we were to sort of use the pagan goddesses as examples of that, and like exploring all the different,
Yeah.
cryptics even of the goddesses and the different multifaceted personalities there. Um, but it always seems to be that there is an element of going aligning with nature. I think that's one thing I notice in as a running theme throughout all of them. They all sort of embody the wildness and the surrender of nature. They all sort of represent some aspect of that. Um, Something about being in flow, I guess, in flow with whatever is natural for them, or the element that they represent. And again, that does bring it back to the more new age concept of the divine masculine being a container, a protector, and the
Yeah.
flow and surrender of the feminine in the middle. But yeah, through different personalities altogether, like the Morrows are very different. Chaotic battle, kind of thunderous aspect of nature, Brigid, the warmth of the fire, Danu, the river. So yeah, very fascinating how they sort of all show different aspects of the feminine and the
Yeah.
flow of the feminine and its connection to being in alignment with nature.
Yeah, and I think maybe we mentioned the story as well, like the story of like Skadi, like the mountain goddess in Norse myth.
Mhm.
Like she's probably quintessentially more like the masculine figure because she's kind of on her own, isolated. She was a giant, kind of a fierce force. The gods kind of feared her a little bit, and she went to like basically come to Asgard to defend or avenge her father's death by the gods. And they basically were like, "Well, we can give you a husband." And she's like, "Okay, I'll take a husband." You know? And so even though like she is like again like kind of this masculine, more leaning figure, she still is like wooed by the aspect of like you could have one of the gods as like your
This
plaything.
guy over here, right? This
Yeah, but the
handsome
thing that's funny
guy.
is like she wanted the prettiest of the gods. So you have this like skiing mountain giant woman. She's like, I want Balder, the pretty one. And then they allow her to choose her husband based on their feet. And so she chooses the prettiest feet, which was Njord, the sea god. Um, yeah, so again, interesting that she's like had a foot fetish. That was something they were exploring.
And there was the origins of the foot fetish.
Yeah, yeah. Those seafarers you got to watch out for. They got the pretty feet.
Oh goodness. But yeah, I suppose as a sort of to bring it back to, we were talking about May Day and this union of the masculine and the feminine. It really sort of highlights the importance of choosing someone that's compatible with your own version of whatever divine feminine that you want to represent.
Yeah.
Then choose a divine masculine that is a good counterpart for that, or a good, yeah, like partner in crime throughout life. Because they do tend to be paired off. Is it the same in the kind of Norse and Germanic fields as well? Do they sort of pair off in similar ways, or do you ever find them completely opposites? Like are there any couples in the
As far as the
folklore?
pairings, well, the
Mhm.
Njord and Skadi story is definitely they don't work out. Like it's kind of like the story of like love not working because you're too opposite. She loved the
Mm,
mountains, he loved the seas, and they tried to like work it out and tried to like move between the mountains and the seas, but eventually it just didn't work. They never found happiness. Um, I would say probably the best example of love would probably be Thor and Sif. We don't
mhm,
know much about Sif, but Thor being more of like the protector, but also the aggressor going out fighting giants. They have sons together, and then she's the goddess of wheat and the fields, and is said to
mhm,
have golden hair. So embodies a little bit more of the feminine, the earth agrarial cycles, and then he is more of like the go out and do things and protect. So
mm,
you see a lot more of those traditional, old world roles of masculine and feminine.
yeah,
But then Bragi and Idun are very interesting. So Bragi is not a war god. I think it even mentions like he is not a fighter. Bragi is a
mhm,
creative, a musician, a poet, and then Idun is the grower of the apples of immortality. And
yeah.
so you see a very different connection, and they're said to be quite happy together.
Oh, isn't that fascinating? So it does actually show that there are different types of pairing as well. There's not just a generic one way a union can look. It's
Yeah,
fascinating that that was being explored all the way back then when those folklore tales were written.
yeah. Well, and Odin's an interesting one because he's married to Frigg, but he has many lovers, and so the kind of marriage for like societal roles like is something that happens, something still happens today is people get married just to have children or just for a role in society,
Yeah.
and then they have external love affairs. And Odin was definitely more of the external love affair type.
That's fascinating. I'm always seeing similarities between Odin and the Dagda, the Celtic Dagda, and he's
Oh
exactly
yeah,
the
yeah,
same. Like he's married to like her, and then someone else, or someone down the road as well. And you're like, oh, this guy gets around a bit, doesn't he?
yeah, yeah.
But he's considered to be the good father. He's the Dagda means the good father, and he's that's his role is to be this like abundant, ever giving, so generous. He's got all these lovers attached to him.
He just has
So
so much love to give.
he had so much love to give.
He can't be
That's
contained with just one lover.
yeah, yeah. So it's fascinating. We sort of think of polyamory and stuff as quite a modern thing, but maybe it actually does go further back, and there were different types of unions, not just monogamous
Yeah.
ones.
Well, and I think there's no, the ultimate lesson is there's no one size fits all. And I think the paganism does great. Like, I'm a very, very monogamous person. I do not understand polyamory at all, but some people,
Yeah,
when I talk to them about polyamory, they don't understand monogamy at all. And so it just
yeah,
shows that humans are very different and we all have different understandings, different backgrounds, different past. And so
mm,
it creates us into very different people. And ultimately, I think that's why paganism is so much better as a belief in a cultural system, is because it allows for different pathways to exist and be celebrated.
yeah. It's much more of a sort of open exploration, isn't it? Than you shall act this way and you shall not behave this way. It's what I like about paganism, and then this connects with the Norse, the Germanic, and the Celtic worlds, is there's no real rule book. It's just stories that you can, like you were saying earlier, we can sort of explore within our own psyches. We can adapt into our own lives. We can take the lessons from, and in many ways, they're like the wisdom keepers and the elders that we're kind of missing today in today's society.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and it's so important because when you get a rule book out, people are more likely to reject it perhaps, or they will live by it through fear. When it's much more authentic, it feels much more authentic to me, and this is why I love paganism, to
yeah, yeah.
explore things through stories and then chew the meat, spit out the bones.
Yeah, and I think the idea of wisdom keepers as well is like there's different wisdom keepers. Like, obviously the pagan society wasn't as well developed as like our society. They didn't have like a sprawling place with different, temples to each god necessarily in like the Norse or the Celtic, but we have that in the Greek and the Roman.
Mm,
And so if you had problems of love, you wouldn't go to like, a god unassociated with love. You would go to the goddesses or gods associated with love and issues.
mm,
Just like you would match your pathways.
yeah.
Um, and I think that's, wisdom keepers as well. There's people, we're not all jack of all trades. We all have masteries in different things. Like if someone
Mm,
came to me asking for advice on, Loki, I'd be like, I can't really help you. I know someone that can, and we can be more honest about that. But if you need help on an Odinic advice or, or feminine advice as far as healing your feminine through an earth goddess lens, it's a very specific pathway. But
yeah,
I can help people that need healing through an earth goddess lens.
yeah.
Um, where someone might need healing more through the polyamorous, because Freya is a little bit more on the polyamorous persuasion of love. Maybe you need to go more the Freya route. And I think it's a beautiful way to kind of label ourselves as well, because we're a society obsessed with labels.
Mm.
And talking about like religions, it's like, yeah, I can label, I can help you with this stuff, but not all of this stuff.
This stuff we put a veil over. Draw a little curtain.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Can't
for
feel
those
this
people over
anymore.
there. Like,
Yeah, it's much, much nicer to have a broader look on life, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, even just the other day, someone came up to me. They're like, what should I have for dinner tonight? And it's like, well, if you came to me, you probably want a healthier choice, because I'm going to tell you something healthier, because I eat more healthy. if you
Yeah.
want, if you want someone to tell you to go eat fried chicken, go find somewhere else. Like, I'm not going to tell you that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, curious about what will you be doing to celebrate Beltane where you are? Is there anything going on locally to you?
So I do have my like little shaman circles I've been doing here. I've been looking for an outdoor venue for us to have a fire, but I live in a city now, and they really don't like
Okay.
people having fires. So I've been really
Good
trying to
on
find like,
Beltanes.
yeah, I know. Like, I literally went to a park. It's like 15 minutes away, and it has like the most beautiful fire pit I've ever seen. And they don't allow fires there. So clearly, at some point, they
Oh,
did. So I think I'm going to look up what the fine is for if you get caught. Like if it's less than $100, I might just do it anyways and just hope we don't get caught.
oh, that's so funny. I really hope that you don't get arrested on Beltane. That would
I mean,
be
it's like the place that we had the Samhain fire when I was in Glastonbury. It's basically something like that. It's just like in the middle of a park. There's a beautiful fire pit that was clearly made by the park. They don't let you use.
yeah, that's really silly, isn't it? Really
Let the
silly. And
pagans use the fires.
I mean, you could always go on that, just it's part of your religion, it's part of your belief. There's
But I
wiggle
don't
room
know.
for stuff like that.
I'm sure you've seen the meme where like the guy has like the note, and it's just like, do you have a permit for that? And it's just like they open it. It's like, I do what I want. I just want a permit. Like, I hand to him. It's just like, it's cool. I'm a pagan. Religious exemption.
Oh, it's a sad thing, isn't it, when people stop fires happening, like in nice, like communal settings like that, or in woodland areas. Obviously, in safe ways where you're not going to be burning the whole forest down by
Right.
accident. But
Well, and that's the
what a
thing. Like,
shame.
clearly, I saw like, like they had like a lid on it, and I opened it, and there's like trash in there. So like, clearly, people have had their like a rager there and like thrown beer cans and stuff. And it's like, so let me do a ceremonial fire. Won't be better than
The
throwing
actual
trash in
warmth.
it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I really hope that happens for you because I do think everyone deserves a good fire on Beltane.
I'll find it. I'll figure out a way, or I'll pay a fine. But yeah, no, like I was telling you before, we did have, because the Fellowship of Northern Traditions, being more Norse aligned, we had our Ostara celebration a couple weeks ago, and it was really
Yeah.
nice. We have it at a Viking long haul. We did a ritual to Freya, Idun, Ostara, and then like we had like an open thing where I kind of blended an idea of like procession, because it seems like there's a lot of processions in
Mm,
Beltane. So I
mm.
had people proceed or process their offerings around the fire 3 times. And I had everyone celebrate. So I had everyone have a musical instrument, and everyone played and celebrated as someone proceeded around with their offering. Yeah, it was pretty nice.
I love that. That's so, so special. Yeah, I mean, you can create ritual around Beltane fairly easily as well. I think for those of us, or for those of the listeners today that are thinking, oh, I haven't got anywhere to go to where there's a local fire. How can I celebrate Beltane? There's lots of beautiful rituals that you can do, even sort of collecting spring flowers to address your altar with, and um, reflecting on the themes we've reflected on today with friends. I always suggest honey mead. Always get some honey mead in for Beltane because it represents the fertility of the bees and the land, and the essence of what union can be. So there's lots of ways to enjoy it, and yeah, if not just being out on the land. Being out on the land
Yeah.
is a beautiful time. It's the most beautiful time of the year to be out for Beltane. So
Yeah. I
we'll
mean, the sun's setting at like 8:30 now. Let's go out and enjoy it.
yeah, come back late with grass in your hair. Madonna
I think that's the best way, to come back late with the grass in your hair.
says.
Yeah, I think I really like going to bed tired this time of year. Like, did I use my body as much as I can?
Yeah.
Um, I don't like being inside. I don't like watching TV during this time of year and playing video games. Like, I really like to go out and use my body and go to bed
Mm.
tired with grass in my hair.
There better be grass in your hair. Is there grass in your hair now?
No, I have bedhead because it's early, Kubi.
Yeah, it's early there.
Yeah. I haven't gotten to the grass yet. I'll get there.
You've got a whole day ahead of you.
All right. Well, I think we're over an hour, and I think we've had a good talk. So I think
Yeah.
yeah, I feel good about it. Again, I just want to make sure people know that we mean nothing but love by having these conversations, and I really hope for a world where we're able to talk a little bit more openly about things.
Yeah.
And I hopefully we're getting there.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's to that. We're wishing you a lovely Beltane, Jacob. I hope you have fun not getting arrested. And
Yeah, lovely Beltane to you as well, Kubi, and to all of our amazing listeners that stick around for us just to laugh and giddy about saying things such as like a wrecked.
yeah.
All
Take
right,
care
Beltane's
all.
blessings, everyone.